And again, it was a condition orange for me. I had identified a potential threat and I was wargaming the scenarios of what I was going to do. Was I going to flee or was I going to fight? And when fight or flight began to kick in, I chose to stand my ground. Let me ask you this. If someone wanted to make you a target right now, how easy would that be? Here's the truth. Carrying a gun doesn't automatically make you safer. Your gun is actually your last resort. What actually makes you safe is your own situational awareness. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So welcome back to the channel. If you are new to this channel, my name is Anthony, and here we talk about all things preparedness, training, and education. And today, as I said, we're talking about situational awareness. So let's get right into it. You need to be able to spot danger way before it ever becomes a threat. You see, inside your home, you control the environment. But outside your home, the environment is completely unpredictable. And that's where awareness becomes critical, more critical than carrying your gun. So you need to learn to develop a mindset of awareness. And first, that starts with having a framework for awareness itself. One of the best frameworks out there for awareness is Cooper's color codes. The late Colonel Jeff Cooper was a United States Marine. And he believed that the most powerful tool that we have to protect ourselves is actually our mindset. And based on his experience, Colonel Cooper came up with a color code that allows you to move from one mindset to the next, and that allows you to be able to escalate your mindset to handle any given situation that may come at you in a daily basis. Each color code on that chart represents a state of awareness, and let's run through those real quickly so you can become familiar with them. The first color is white. That's where you don't want to be. Color code white means you are unaware, you're distracted, you're generally tuned out to your surroundings, you're not in touch with your environment at all, and you don't want to be in color code white. So living in color code white, that is the greatest deadly mistake you can make because you cannot deal with your surroundings or your situation because you're not aware of them at all. So if you're living in color code white, you have no need to carry a gun because it's not going to do you any good in that point anyway. The next color code is yellow, and this is where you want to spend most of your existence, and hopefully you can spend your existence in the color yellow. And yellow simply means that you are relaxed, prepared, and aware, meaning you have good situational awareness. You're not paranoid, but you are prepared by being aware of your surroundings, and we're going to talk about what that means, and we're going to talk about some habits to get into that will help you live in condition yellow as it is. I live my life in condition yellow. It's just what I've trained my mind to do. So you want to train yourself to live in the yellow zone. Now, the next color code is orange. Color code orange means you've identified a potential threat, you are prepared to act, and you are wargaming that specific scenario that's unfolding and your possible reactions to that scenario. So I want to give you a real life example of color code orange, and it actually has to do with Home Depot Big Orange. Back in 2016, I was at a Home Depot, and it was after a massive flood took place in the area that I lived in. And I was situationally aware, but I wasn't more big news aware and really factoring that into what was actually unfolding around me. I was in Home Depot. I was getting some supplies to help one of my family members rebuild from a flooding incident. And I was going out to my vehicle pushing a big lumber cart. And so I began to unload that lumber cart into my truck. And out of the corner of my eye, I noticed a bigger guy coming at me through the parking lot. And so I kind of scanned at him, and then I kind of scanned over my right shoulder as I was unloading that lumber, and I noticed another guy coming at me. And they were both kind of coming at me, and they weren't running at me, but they were closing the distance, not casually walking. And I really wasn't sure what was going on, and so I kind of kept an eye on both of them. As they closed in on me, I started getting a little uncomfortable, so I positioned myself. I rolled the cart back, and I positioned myself between the cart and them, so I would be able to get around to the driver's side of the vehicle. And I started thinking about the possible scenarios here that I might need to leave my valuable lumber on the cart, jump in my car, and exit the situation. or I might need to stand my ground and fight. And so I was going through the different scenarios, and these guys kept closing in. So I started kind of feeling nervous, kind of felt my body entering into fight or flight. And I stood my ground. That's what I chose to do in that moment. And as they got about 10 feet away from me, I kind of raised my voice and I said, "Hey, can I help you guys with something?" And they kind of stopped in their tracks. I guess they didn't realize what they were doing. They said, "Yeah, man, it's really crowded in there, and we just want your cart." And so I didn't factor the greater regional surrounding situation of what was going on there, and it really didn't click to make sense. I just noticed two guys beelining to me. But what was going on is we had a massive regional flood. So the home stores like Home Depot and Lowe's were absolutely packed with people trying to get rebuilding supplies. And that particular day, I believe, was a Saturday, so it was super crowded. There were no carts available, go figure, because everybody was using those. And those guys had beelined it to me because I was about to unload and they wanted my cart. I didn't know that. And again, it was a condition orange for me. I had identified a potential threat and I was wargaming the scenarios of what I was going to do. Was I going to flee or was I going to fight? And when fight or flight began to kick in, I chose to stand my ground and find out what the situation is, and it all worked out for the good. And so that's condition orange. Hopefully that makes sense to you. If you've been in condition orange before, drop that down in the comments below so that we can learn from each other. And so we don't want to live in condition orange, and we don't want to manufacture condition orange. We want to live in that condition yellow, but orange becomes a real possibility as we identify potential threats and plan how we're going to react to those threats. All right, the next color code that Colonel Jeff came up with is red. And code red is you have moved from wargaming to taking action. You have identified a threat or an emergency and you are on high alert and you are actively engaged in an emergency response to that situation or to that threat. Now, I haven't personally been there in a gunfight, but I have another story for you that I went from code orange to code red, and my brother and I were driving down a major highway in a place that I used to live, and we were kind of just talking and driving, and I heard a familiar sound on the road that I was traveling of a vehicle skidding and then striking an object. And as I looked to my left, there was a minivan airborne and rolling in the air as it became airborne. And so I immediately knew that was going to be a bad situation. I pulled my car off to the side, made sure that I was safe on the side of the road, which was across the highway. I jumped out, and as I was jumping out, I was simultaneously grabbing my phone because I knew I would need to dial 911, and that van was landing and sliding on its hood. And so I checked the highway. I immediately went from condition yellow, just kind of talking with my brother, being aware. I sped right through condition orange into red because I had to take immediate action because someone's life or lives were in danger, and that proved to be true. We crossed the highway. As I was crossing the highway, I was dialing 911 to get some emergency responders on the way. My brother and I were first on the scene. Two men were ejected from that vehicle through the windshield. And we found those two men, and we were able to administer the best we could, life-saving help to them. And as we did everything that we could do on the spot, we waited for emergency responders so that they could provide additional medical care for those two men. And so that is an example of immediately speeding through orange and going to code red, that you have to spring into action. I've had that happen several times in my life. And every time I've managed not to go from code red into code black. And that's the last code that we need to talk about. And that's the code that you don't want to find yourself in. And videos and information like this are going to help you prevent from sliding into code black. And code black means that you are panicked, and you're panicked so badly by the situation unfolding or the situation happening that you are frozen and you're unable to respond to that situation. It usually means that you've been totally caught off guard and you are not mentally and or physically prepared for what is unfolding in front of you, and you are experiencing a broken down physical and mental response, maybe both at the same time. This is the color code you do not want to find yourself ever in, and this is why we train, this is why we talk about things like this, and this is why we find out what we can do mentally and physically to prevent ourselves from getting there. So what helps us to live in condition yellow, be able to progress through orange to red and not fall into black is developing good situational awareness. So you want to practice awareness habits as you're outside of your home. So when you are outside of your house, no matter where you are on any given day or in any given situation, you always want your eyes to be up and you want your ears to be open. You don't want to be buried in your phone. You don't want to be unduly distracted by your surroundings. You don't want to have your ears or your hearing impeded by earbuds or even loud music in your vehicle. You always want to maintain your God-given senses for awareness, and primarily that's going to come from your eyes and your ears being unimpeded by things that you've introduced into your life that would cause a distraction or cause you to be totally unaware. So first, learn to scan your environment. We're talking about using your eyes, always keeping your eyes open. This is not paranoia. You're not constantly lurking around every corner. Ha ha, I found you, bad guy. No, you're not doing that. But you're just casually scanning outside, and inwardly you are looking for potential threats. And so you're being aware of your environment. It's kind of like defensive driving. You don't get stuck in driving habits. Maybe actually the younger generation today does, but you don't get stuck just staring into one point on the road. You're constantly looking in your rearview mirror and you're constantly checking your side mirrors. You're being aware of your total surroundings the very best that you can. The same thing stands true when you go out to eat, when you go shopping, when you go running errands, you go to school, you go to work, wherever you go. You want to have this same situational awareness, just like defensive driving. Your defensive walking, defensive sitting, whatever it is, defensive interacting with the public, you want to be aware. And that begins with your eyes, casually scanning your environment on the outside, but taking notice of the things that you see and anything that might seem out of place. So, for instance, when you go into a restaurant that you've never been in before, you want to scan for the exits. You want to know where the exits are. Obviously, you came through the main entrance, but you want to know where those possible exits are. Now, you can't go running through everybody's kitchen, but you can bet every restaurant that I've ever been in and ever seen, ever worked at when I was a young man, they had a rear exit, if not two rear exits. And so you want to be cognizant of where those exits and entrances are. You also want to scan that building and make yourself aware of any blind spots that a threat could come from to you or to your family that you may not see. And then one of the biggest things that you want to take mental note of and do very quickly as you enter into an unknown place with unknown people, you want to assess demeanor. You want to be able to look at people and assess whether they are relaxed, whether they are casually going about their business, or you want to know if they look angry. You want to know if they look nervous. You want to know if they're scanning around looking for someone looking at them because they might be about to do something. And so you want to be keenly aware of people's demeanor. You want to be able to assess whether they look like they're out of their mind on drugs or whether they're drunk or not. So you want to tune in to their body language. And especially you want to be aware of, just like at Home Depot, if somebody is closing the distance and they're closing distance fast on you for a particular purpose, you want to be aware of that. These are red flags that should pop up in your mind immediately as you're looking around into a space that you've entered into that's an unknown, or the people in there are an unknown to you. And that's like shopping, again, restaurants, cafes, wherever you might find yourself during the day. Now you want to pay particular attention during your day to transitional spaces, spaces like parking lots and moving from your vehicle to the intended destination. And also places like gas pumps, moving from your vehicle to the gas pump and what's beyond the gas pump on the other side, and always 360 degrees watching around your vehicle at the gas pump so that you can be aware of anyone approaching you. I had another situation like that at a Walmart. I had my family with me in the vehicle, and as is the habit, when my wife is in the vehicle and I get outside the vehicle, she locks the door so that nobody can enter the vehicle from the passenger side, either to the back to my kids or to the front to her. And this was a little bit later in the evening, and there was a man who was walking through the parking lot, and it was obvious to me that he was on drugs or he had some disorder that caused him to have very erratic behavior. And he was closing the gap on me quickly, but he wasn't making eye contact. He wasn't looking at me. He was frantically talking and waving his hands, and so still wanted to get out of his way, which I did. I knew the vehicle was locked and my family was safe inside there, and so I got around between the vehicle and him on an angle, and he was coming at me on an angle, and he was closing the distance pretty fast, but again, he was erratic, and so I wasn't sure what he was doing. I didn't have a chance to say anything to him. He made it to his destination, which was the trash can that was about 10 feet in front of me. And he was throwing something out violently mad in the trash can, and then he turned around and he went the other way. And so again, I was wargaming, planning on what I was going to do, and I didn't need to do anything at that point. But I was going through the situation in my mind. And first I was going to start with a loud voice to ward him off, and then obviously physically defend myself if necessary. But thank the Lord, I did not have to do that. So parking lots, gas pumps, ATM foyer areas or outside ATMs, that's another high danger zone that you want to be aware of. You want to be aware, especially at the ATMs, if there is a line, if you live in an urban area where you might develop a line, you want to be aware of the people behind you. And that's why they make those mirrors at the ATM so that you can look in those mirrors. That's another pro tip, not really a pro tip because I'm not a pro, I'm just a guy, but I use windows a lot. And I don't know if you do this a lot, but let me know down in the comments if you do. But I always use every visual advantage that I can. And so that if I can see behind me in a window as I'm walking, I'm going to use that advantage every single time. If I can use a mirror to see behind me in whatever case, whether I'm in my vehicle or whether it's a mirror or a mirrored panel inside of a store, I'm always going to check that and allow that to aid in my visual sight of locating potential threats or just being aware. So, and that brings us to the specifics of concealed carry. So let's talk about you're carrying a gun, and let's talk about your awareness while carrying a gun. Because if you're carrying a gun, your situational awareness is going to be the defining factor that is going to keep you out of the situations where you would ever need to use your gun. With that in mind, it goes without saying it's concealed carry for a reason, and you need to make sure it's concealed and stay discreet. You want to look like the average person, the gray man, if you will. You don't want to print, and you want to be comfortable both mentally and physically with that gun so that you're not constantly checking your gun or constantly readjusting your gun or trying to make it more comfortable on your person. So stay discreet and don't advertise that you're carrying by being nervous about carrying or being uncomfortable while you're carrying. And it goes without saying you want to avoid printing. In fact, in some states, you need to check the laws in your state, but some states it's actually illegal to print. But you want to avoid printing altogether so that no one knows that you're carrying a gun. If you happen to end up in a situation and a bad guy realizes you're carrying the gun, you're going to be his first target. And so you want to avoid printing at all costs. And this should go without saying, but you'd be surprised how many people actually mention that they are carrying a gun, even when they're out and about to perfect and total strangers. You don't need to tell anybody that you're carrying a gun. It's concealed for a reason. And so don't tell anyone that you're carrying your gun. In fact, I go to the great lengths to tell my children, especially if you have younger children, that they're not to mention it at all. And if they need to ask me a question, we have a code word. Like my son will say, "Hey, Daddy, did you bring Frank with you?" And that's our little code word for my gun being on my person is Frank. And he always knows that, but he likes to check sometimes too because his situational awareness is sometimes greater than mine. So if this has taught you anything, it should teach you that awareness is a skill that can be trained and it needs to become second nature for you. So part of training yourself to become second nature is to run those mental what-if scenarios. You're at a restaurant. You're constantly gaming out the situation saying, if a threat comes through that main doorway, what am I going to do? Where is cover that I can take advantage of? Where is my closest exit? How am I going to usher or exit my family out and away from this potential threat? Or how am I going to use cover to stand my ground and address the threat if necessary? You can even go so far as to play recall games to train your mind. You can play recall games with your family and your children. Have them memorize, or you try to memorize license plates that you see as you're eating and you're looking out the window, or you're walking through a parking lot, or have them try to remember what someone is wearing and then recall that when you get safely to the vehicle of what someone had on so they can recall that. You know, one of the biggest problems there is when flight or fight takes over as far as calling witnesses at an accident scene or an emergency scene is people's ability to recall what they've seen. And so if you train your mind to do that, you will be at a greater advantage if you need to take action, and you'll be a greater asset if something happens where you need to witness to something that did take place. So the other thing you can do is make it a rule. When you enter into an unknown space, take note immediately of all the exits. When you go to a restaurant, for instance, make it a habit to sit away from that main entrance but facing the main entrance, and know the alternative exits as well. Something else that you're going to want to do to build awareness habits is avoid common mistakes. The biggest common mistake for situational awareness or impeding situational awareness is distractions. You don't ever want to get tunnel vision. You're locked in on something or someone and you cannot focus on the situation around you. You don't ever want to get tunnel vision. Your phone is a big focus of tunnel vision, and you need to be able to break free from that. If you can, leave it in the vehicle. Many times when I know my wife has her phone, I will leave my phone so that I can be situationally aware for all of us. Now, if I'm not unable to do that, if we're going to be in different parts shopping or something like that, I'll take my phone with me. It goes on so I can hear if she needs me, and it goes in my pocket though, so I'm not tempted to be scrolling while I'm walking through the store or while I'm eating at the restaurant. I want to have total situational awareness. I want my eyes to be up. I want my ears to be open. And definitely don't wear headphones. Man, it is so common. If you've ever been in an airport lately, it is crazy the number of people who are just sitting ducks for crime or sitting ducks for attackers with their headphones, with their phones and their headphones. They both have their phone in front of them and their headphones on, and they wouldn't know if the airport blew up around them. It is really a sad environment that we live in. Not to mention, you miss out on interaction with people. What happened to the good old days when you could have a conversation with somebody and just enjoy humanity for what it is? We are social creatures and we need that social interaction. So by all means, break free from your phone. It's probably the #1 distraction that is going to prevent you from being situationally aware. Another mistake that people make is relying too heavily on your gun. Your gun is not a magic shield. In fact, your concealed carry permit and the laws that govern that permit, they only give you permission to carry that gun. You don't have permission to use that gun. That falls under a whole other set of rules called the laws and rules of deadly force, and you better know when you are able to use that gun. So your gun is not a shield and your gun is not a deterrent. We don't brandish our gun just to deter somebody. And the last common mistake I think we all may mentally make at some point is, oh, that's not going to happen to me, or it's not going to happen in this place. Look, bad guys don't care about your zip code, and they don't check the zip code before they come there to do bad things. So don't ever assume and say, hey, that can't happen here, or that's not going to happen to me, because Murphy will make you a liar every single time. So remember, awareness outside the home is not paranoia. It's preparedness. If you carry a concealed carry handgun, you owe it to yourself and everyone around you to be alert, calm, and above all things, responsible. So make awareness part of your lifestyle. Practice it every day. And remember, the best fight to be in is the one that you can avoid altogether. Hey, if this information gave you something to think about, go ahead and hit that like button. And if you want more practical concealed carry tips, subscribe to this channel and hit that bell notification so that you get notified every time we put out content like this. I want to thank you for taking the time to watch this video. I want to thank you for making the choice to defend yourself and those you love. And as always, God bless you and yours.